Hi everybody, welcome back to our podcast. Joining me again today, just don't get left out in the cold guys, joining me again today is Lincoln. I was just having a catch up from ours in July. We've got a few things to talk about, changes that have gone on since July. There's been quite a few in our industry. We're going to talk about boiler figures. Some of it will be useful for other installers to take on board. What we are predicting, it's only an opinion, it's not a fact, but what we're predicting may happen or may not happen. So over to you, Link. So when you, July, was discussing numbers and you went on to say about the boilers and numbers you were doing, have you had to make any significant changes? I know it's winter, so it's hard to give me an exact...
Yeah. I mean, the last month or two, it's obviously the end of the year. It's obviously really busy, but 2024 has been a real challenging year. We've had a lot of, seen a lot of downturn in boiler numbers and interest in AC because it's not been really that cold. But I mean, comparing from COVID and that massive boom we had all the way through till probably the start of 24 and throughout. So as a business, it's been a little bit of a quieter year this year. We've kind of financially as a business, it's really rattling down on what we're spending, where we're spending, how much we're spending, everything from merchant supplies to where we buy fuel, the things that you kind of took for granted when you were a little bit more financially. Yeah. So we're kind of adjusted a little bit. We're still doing a fair amount of boilers. We'll probably end up at the end of this year, gas boilers alone, probably around the 1,000 mark. But also heat pumps and AC and doing a little bit more electrical work now and got involved with building work and other bits and pieces.
Are you finding electrification at the minute?
So heat pump inquiries last year before, loads of them hardly went anywhere. And then this year, it seemed to have been a big uptake since the grant change from the 5,000 to the 7.5. So we are doing more, but nowhere in the scale of boilers. The complexities around sizing them and making sure they're compliant with MCS and the logistics of getting them fitted, radiators, pipe sizes, locations for units. So much more to it than just a gas boiler. But as a whole, 24 has been definitely a challenging year. Last 15 years, probably reminiscent of the 2008, 2009 recession is probably the only...
Do you remember that? I went through that awful.
Yeah, well, I took the business on at that time at 24. So that was a challenging time. This year's been quite challenging, but we're fortunate this year because we've had a few as we've grown, we've taken more talent on, and it's been good to work with a different mix of people, and they bring different ideas, and we've kind of tried to refine the business a lot. But last month, we've had quite an increase in boiler numbers and boiler sales. Hopefully it lasts. I mean, you're talking about the boiler tax next year and things that are going to come and hit us all again.
Just confirm that, sorry to interrupt. I ain't clear on this. It's definitely January the 1st that the boilers are going to go up on an average of 180, I think I've heard. Is that?
Well, the latest I read was April 25, which I thought was...
It's definitely not January.
It's definitely not January.
Cool.
I read it was April 25, which I thought was a terrible time because that is the time naturally boiler demand goes off. So to kick that in the butt a bit more and get a worse demand for boilers, it's going to have that tax appear. That's going to make it even less desirable for somebody to buy a boiler from us.
So for instance, like heat pumps. Let's go back to electrification again. So I was hearing statistics. Now again, guys, I'm not 100% sure. I can't really get a statistic to say if this is true or not. But I was in the region that the government are trying to target 60,000 a year, when currently we build around about 40,000 houses per year, which allows 40,000 heat pump. But actually in the private sector, big manufacturing, I won't mention who, like sell 2,000 heat pumps last year, 850 heat pumps. So how would they get expecting? I mean, I can't see how, even if we do 40,000 in new build, we're still miles off that target, aren't we?
Well, the target's 600,000.
But is that not over a certain amount of time? That surely can't be in a year because we don't build that many houses, or is that what they're saying? I'm so unclear on that.
Well, the other thing to consider is 2028. The grant's going to be reassessed, so that £7,500 could disappear. It could carry on. It could go more. It could be dropped. And a lot of businesses recently, you look at big nationals, Octopus, and there's other businesses that have really heavily invested into training, into heat pump and electrification. If anything gets adjusted in the 28 2028 time, when they look at what the grants doing and the available funds they've still got to try and help the electrification of the heating industry, that could have such a negative impact. So you spend a lot of time now training on heat pumps, low water temperature courses, getting involved with manufacturers and everything that you do to get your business ready for fitting heat pumps. And a couple of years down the line, and it happened with the RHI, if you remember the renewable heat incentive years ago, a lot of businesses really invested in that.
I was one of them.
Yeah, and then it didn't really take off because the long-term confidence, or long-term, a few years down the line, you then find actually that all this that you had 2 years ago now no longer exists. The incentive for the grants and incentives from the government for other things, sort of free training courses and things, they all get pulled, and then that's it. Then the spike of interest from customers just drops like a stone, and you're back to fitting gas and oil boilers.
Yeah, be interesting to see what happens. I mean, the current government and the last government are pushing, but a lot of the professionals in the industry are saying it's pretty much impossible. So I've heard statements saying if we went flat out and we all stopped doing everything, it'd take 50 years to do the electrification targets, with every engineer on board to do the whole of the UK, but then they'd have to upgrade the whole network, which is probably about 100 years to do the whole network of all the infrastructure to do it. So the government's target is probably a little bit too much. Now, if you've got 600,000 heat pumps in the UK, if let's compare that to 1.5 million, I think they say roughly, don't they? Is it a year changes? They're not factual again, these figures. These are only figures that get passed around.
Yeah.
And people had the
I think it was like 1.3, it peaked at 1.7, I think. I saw some.
And then is it 900,000 that are retro and the rest are new build or whatever it is?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that even if they get 600,000, in my opinion, that's not really going to make a big difference to the pollution ratio, what they're trying to save. Or is it? I don't know.
No, and the other thing that's currently being considered is grant funding for hybrid systems, because hybrid decarbonise such a large proportion of what a gas or oil boiler would produce. 80%, some are 90%, I've read in some articles.
That's not bad, I suppose.
So there's talk of funding coming around for
I think they've got it in Scotland, haven't they? You can.
hybrid, yeah, not in England. I think no. The latest I heard, that might be 50% of what is the 7.
Well, that makes a little bit of sense, because at least you can use them onto existing combi bars and existing systems. But again, our customers going to go out and pay for that when they can't even afford to do it now. And if they get the grant, for instance, the grant come along and they're fantastic, they've got the grant, then if the thing breaks, then they've got a cost of maintenance cost or whatever. So would that even work? I don't know. I mean, I have no solutions, and that's why I get guests like yourself on to give me your opinion. So it's like having a crystal ball, isn't it? Because I don't think any of us really know where it's going. And I think the boilers, are they down about 300,000 this year or something?
Yeah, I think so. I think for us as a whole, we're just switching over.
No, it's fine. Sorry.
For us as a business, we're just trying to train ourselves in every area, because
Breach-proofing,
yeah, and I kind of think it's more of a multi-fuel approach. I mean, for where we live at home, I need a new boiler soon. I was thinking of a heat pump.
Do you want to give us a call? We can sort that out for you.
Well, but I just think oil. We're on oil at the minute. Oil works. The place gets hot. I like oil. You can fill your tank up and forget about it for a good period of time. I think the heat pump industry is in a bit of a transitional stage. The costs are still relatively high. There's a lot of interest. I mean, ourselves, we've had a company from China and a company from Australia actually flown over and sat in the office and said, we can supply you heat pumps for like a third of what you're paying for these major manufacturers, which isn't really of interest to us, because we want the relationship with the manufacturer. But once the costs start coming down, and once the systems start getting a bit more reliable, people are more trained on them, people understand them better, the process of actually sizing the system becomes a little bit more simplified, then hopefully they might take off a little bit more. But for us, for now, and like our few-year plan is all around making sure engineers are trained on gas, oil, LPG, heat pumps, AC, because air conditioning's another.
It's very expensive. I mean, you mentioned AC, so you've got to get F-gas, off-tech, gas safe. In gas safe, there's several elements of different areas, same in all of them. So by the time you've done the training and stuff, each engineer is getting really expensive to put through. And I'm not saying that's a negative thing. I'm saying that is an issue if it doesn't kick off, because you've just wasted a load of money on training, etc. And I think that was your point, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's what.